Buenos días.
Good morning.
Me llamo Ludi Soderman y aquí está mi compañera Alexa Malishak.
I am Ludi Soderman, and I am Alexa Mashek.
Somos intérpretes de español a inglés, inglés a español.
We are Spanish-English interpreters.
En esta conferencia, A Right to Care, el compromiso también está para la justicia del lenguaje.
At this conference, Our Right to Care, we're also committed to language justice.
La justicia del lenguaje dice que todas las voces son importantes y todas deben ser escuchadas.
Language justice says that all voices are important and all voices should be heard.
Es importante para nosotras decir lo que usted dice. Su voz vale mucho.
It's important for us to be able to say what you are saying. Your voice is very, very important.
Así que por favor les pedimos que cuando hable un poco más lento que de costumbre.
So we ask that when you're speaking, if you can speak a little more slowly than usual.
Como bien pueden ver, también tenemos dos compañeras que en estos momentos están también comunicándose con el lenguaje de señas ASL.
As you can see, we also have two people here who are communicating through ASL, through sign language.
Así que si usted habla muy rápido, yo voy o Alexa va a hacer este gesto. Slow down.
So if you are speaking very quickly, Ludi or I will make this gesture to ask you to please slow down.
That's for you.
Gracias por tenernos aquí.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for that important message about voice justice, language justice. I'm Dorothy Roberts. I'm a professor. Thank you. I'm a professor here at Penn in Africana Studies, the law, and sociology, and also the director of the Penn program on race, science, and society. And I also want to welcome you to this international conference on our right to care, family caregivers, and people who depend on their care versus the care industry. This convening is the fruit of a wonderful collaboration between myself and my dear colleague, Pilar Gonyalos. I want to make sure I get the accent correct. Pons, and a group of organizers, activists who've been working so long to make this a more caring society. The Global Women's Strike. And Women of Color, Global Women's Strike. Center for the Study of Social Policy. Women's Way. And Women in Dialogue. I am predicting that this will be a historic landmark convening. We've brought together academics, researchers, advocates, community organizers, unpaid and paid caregivers, and those who depend on care locally here in Philadelphia, nationally, and even internationally. Together, we're going to explore how caring relationships based on promoting autonomy, independent living, and mutual respect can be financially supported rather than expanding a care industry based on profits, forced dependence, low standards, low pay, and exploitation. This is a two-day conference Today, we're featuring 2 keynote speeches and 4 jam-packed panels. I'm just so thrilled at the people who are joining these panels, really the leading global experts and activists in this field. We'll have grassroots campaigners and national and international researchers and advocates, as well as a conversation with special guest, U.S. Representative Gwen Moore, a Democrat from Milwaukee. And we're going to end with a public reception, book signing, and archives display. Tomorrow's event will take place at Crossroads Women's Center in Germantown. And it will build on today's discussions with strategy sessions on how to win policies that caregivers need. And that will end with a rally for a care income now at Love Park in Center City at 3 p.m. So we're covering all bases with this. Now, before I turn the podium over to my colleague and co-organizer, Pilar, Professor Pilar, I want to thank Maddie Johnson. Where's Maddie? Okay, Maddie Johnson, who is the Program on Race, Science, and Society's Administrative Coordinator, who worked tirelessly over many months on every aspect of the logistics of this conference. PRSS just hired her, and the minute she was hired, she jumped into spending all her time working on getting this conference together. As well as our many amazing co-sponsors who made this conference possible. I'm going to read their names. I would suggest holding applause until the end because there's a lot of them and we're already running late. We'll be here all morning. But we are so thrilled and grateful. We couldn't have done this conference without the financial and promotional and spiritual support of these co-sponsors. I've mentioned some of them. Okay, High Point Cafe, Howard Family Giving, Penn program we mentioned already, Philly Child Care Collective, the University of Pennsylvania Center for Africana Studies, where I should have mentioned PRSS is housed, Penn School of Social Policy and Practice, Penn School of Nursing, Penn Lauder Institute, Penn Program in Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies, Penn Center for Research in Feminist, Queer, and Transgender Studies, the University Research Foundation Grants Program, Weaver's Way Co-op, Women in Dialogue, Women's Way, and the Mellon Foundation gets special thanks for its support for the Wages for Housework Community Archives and the archives and historical components of the Our Right to Care Conference. So thank you to all. And now I will turn over the podium, the table, to Professor Pilar, who will add some remarks to open this conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. My name is Pilar Gonyolan-Spons, and I am an associate professor here in sociology. I'm already speaking too fast, so slow down, Pilar. Nina, who just met me on Zoom for a few months, already told me, you're a fast talker. So, taking the lesson. So, I study care work, and it has been a true honor to be a part of organizing this conference with all of you. It's been a really special honor to help put my grain of salt into this effort, this historical convening. I'm a numbers person, and I was asked to share a little bit, some numbers about care work. So what I'll do is share a few brief facts to contextualize the importance of care work, and then I'll move on to introduce our very first, very special keynote speaker. So we often hear that care is the foundation of our economy or of our society, and that care is devalued. But what does that actually mean? Some of these numbers can help illustrate this. So providing care is not only essential in the sense that literally everything would fall apart if nobody was doing it, but it's also, we could say, the largest sector or like industry, I mean, not in the private sense, but like the largest labor sector of the economy. The daily provision of care for those who need it, and these includes children, folks with disabilities, older adults, requires a vast amount of human labor, human effort. In the United States, on an average day, there are 93 million people who provide unpaid care to children and adults. And there are 32 million individuals who provide paid care. That's a total of 120 million individuals engaged in providing care on a daily basis. Do you know how many workers does it take to run the retail, wholesale, and manufacturing industries? 27 million. Providing care involves 4.5 times more people than running the three largest industries in the economy. And this work is extremely unevenly distributed by gender and by race. Women provide more than double the amount of care than men provide. And that's both because women are more likely to be caregivers than men, but also because caregiving women provide more care work than caregiving men. For instance, women make up over 90% of the childcare workers and over 85% of home health aides. And Black and Latina women are very disproportionately represented in paid care jobs. Nearly 40% of the workers in nursing homes and in home health aid are non-white women, nearly 40%. This group of women represents 11% of the overall workforce, but 40% of the workforce in long-term care. So care is essential and a huge amount of work effort. And in what ways is it devalued? One of the most direct measures that we have that care work is devalued is evidence showing that providing care is associated with economic losses. People lose money when they start providing care, meaning people take pay cuts or lose income as a consequence of providing care. We call these care penalties. And there's evidence that care penalties for both paid caregivers as well as unpaid caregivers. Studies show that paid care jobs pay less than jobs that require the same level of skill, but that do not involve caregiving. Researchers show that workers may lose up to 14% in wages for taking on a job in paid care. And providing unpaid care is also linked to economic losses. Individuals drop out of the workforce, reduce work hours, or change jobs to accommodate the care needs of others and to provide that care. Becoming a mother is estimated to reduce women's earnings by 30%. And providing unpaid adult care is estimated to result in a total of $470 billion in wages lost every year. These economic penalties are huge, and they are experienced by many women, by the vast majority of women. But some women experience larger and more care penalties than others. Black and Latina women will often face both paid and unpaid care penalties because they take on the jobs in paid care and also face economic losses related to providing care for children and adults in their families, in their kin networks. And in my current work, I'm asking, what would it look like to get rid of these care penalties? By how much more income would people, disproportionately women and women of color, have disposable if we did not have these care penalties? By how much would gender and race inequality decline if we eliminated these penalties? And I don't have final answers yet, but my analysis suggests that these inequalities will become quite a bit more smaller if we didn't have these care penalties. So I want to leave us with this thought of what would it take to eliminate these care penalties, and how can we build a coalition and a vision that communicates the urgency of eliminating these unjust care economic penalties. So with this, I want to introduce our first and very special keynote speaker, Selma James. Selma James is an anti-sexist, anti-racist, and anti-capitalist campaigner and author, founder of the Wages for Housework. In 1972, Selma put forward Wages for Housework as a political perspective that redefined the working class to include all who work without wages, starting with women, the primary carers everywhere. The International Wages for Housework campaign she founded coordinates the global women's strike, and with her husband and colleague C.L.R. James, she worked in English-speaking Caribbean for independence and federation between 1952 and 1962. Her first anthology, Sex, Race, and Class, The Perspective of Winning, was published in 2012, and her second, Our Time Is Now, Sex, Race, Class, and Caring for People and the Planet, was published in 2021, both by PM Press. They focused on what can be learned from decades of building an international network and the autonomous organizations within it. She was the first spokeswoman for the English Collective of Prostitutes. She is a founding member of the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network. She is a mother and a grandmother. And let me add just a very quick personal note, because it is an incredible honor to introduce someone who has had such a profound impact on my thinking and on the thinking of many others. I first encountered some of her early essays from the 1970s, including the famous essay, The Power of Women and the Subversion of Community, in graduate school, and it opened for me an entirely new perspective about the economy and society, illuminating how its organization rests on the exploitation of what we call labor of love. With unparalleled analytical insight and memorably witty commentary, this essay and many others, more than any others, are essays that to which I return continuously. And because I'm a teacher and I'm a professor here, I have the pleasure to share this text, your text, with the students and see their worldview shift and become deeper and richer and more critical and braver because they learn from you. So thank you for joining us today.
It is my official job to welcome you to this conference to which I think we all contributed and which I think is going to give us a chance to evaluate our own lives and decide how we want to live. That is a big order, but I think that it's worthwhile. I believe that the subject is so valuable. You don't hear me. So crucial to our relationships and to the life that we may want to live, as opposed to the life that we have found ourselves living, that it's worth making that claim for it. I have to say that we, in the Wages for Housework campaign, say that we must invest in caring, not killing. Very tall order for this moment in time, when it seems that killing is more likely than caring. But we will do our own calculations over the course of the next 2 days. Now, I have some deficiency. I can't read. I didn't forget how, I just didn't pay enough attention to my eyes. And so Nina, my partner there, is going to read a few quotes for me, because what I thought we could do to open the conference is to say what some women have said about it, about an income for women, about mothers and what mothers decide and what mothers are forced to decide. So the first person that I want to speak about is Eleanor Rathbone, which some of you may know. She gave a family allowance to us after years of struggle, and up to today, we women have a family allowance for each child that is born live in the UK. And they tried to take it away. They thought we didn't need the money. And they almost had to call the army out against us because women were so infuriated that the little money, the only money they said they could call their own, was to be taken away, that the government changed its mind. And we kept the money. It's not a lot of money, but some money is better than no money. Okay. So she was a wealthy woman, and she came from an unusual family of wealthy people who cared about others. One example of this was the fact that they were ship owners and they never carried slaves. Never. Another example was that her father, Eleanor Rathbone's father, was very upset at the treatment of women in the workhouse, and she wrote to, what's her name, the great nurse, Florence. He wrote to Florence Nightingale, and he said, "Will you come and help me? The women are in trouble." She wrote back and said, "I don't have the time, but I'll tell you exactly what to do, and you do it and you'll get good results." And they proceeded. He wrote, she wrote, and they changed the situation, at least in Liverpool, for women. Now, we don't get many rich people that we like. Mentioning no names. But Eleanor Rathbone was not one of those. We have to thank her for noticing what the situation was for mothers. Mothers were left out, and we still are in many ways. And so she made some statement that I want to read.
Okay. This was Eleanor Rathbone in her masterpiece, The Disinherited Family, in 1924. She said, "Nothing can justify the subordination of one group of producers, the mothers, to the rest. and their deprivation of all share of their own in the wealth of a community which depends on them for its very existence.
At today, and it has helped us greatly. She became an MP. First of all, she was in the suffrage. They won the vote, and she became an MP. She was not happy with the way the movement responded to women when they won the vote. She said, we've made an implicit bargain that they would fight for the welfare, for the vote, and then we will work for them. But we're not doing the second part, we're only doing the first. She, however, made up for that, and she fought in the Parliament until in 1945, as the first act of the new welfare state, a money wage was paid to mothers called family allowance in the United Kingdom. Now, they didn't get it in the colonies, be sure they didn't. They make money coming in, not going out where colonies were concerned. But we got the family allowance, and people knew that there was something they could call their own, that was theirs by right, that was paid for work that they were all doing. And she set the tone for the next period, and people really appreciated the fight that she had made and the money that she had spent to get us some money, not much, but some. There was another woman who was a supporter, Maud Royden, who was a Welsh woman, and she said,
what we want is not to enable mothers to earn their living, but to ensure that since they have earned it, they should get it.
There's a clarity in these statements which we've lost. Yes, we can make the statements, but we're not used to making those statements, and we're not used to underlining the work that mothers do, because, first of all, they bring all the people of the world into life. Now, that takes some doing. And it takes some requirement, it takes some great act of the society generally to acknowledge that enormity of volume and concern and the caring that it requires, so that we all, or most of us, with any luck, survive as the community all over the world. Okay. The third person I want to mention is a great writer.
Virginia Woolf.
Virginia Woolf was clearly, she was clearly influenced by Rathbone, as so many would. And she was also very interested as an artist, and a good artist, about the money that would enable her to have $500 a year and a room of her own so that she could do the brilliant writing that we know she did. But she didn't forget the mothers. While she was writing the book 3 Guineas, which is really a good book, I do recommend it, while she was writing 3 Guineas, she was putting into 3 Guineas what she wanted mothers to fight for.
This is what she said. Woman must make it her business to press for a living wage, a wage to be paid by the state legally to the mothers for the work of bearing and bringing up children, a real wage, a money wage, so that it became an attractive profession instead of being, as it is now, an unpaid profession, an unpensioned profession, and therefore a precarious and dishonored profession.
I want to, you know, if they're really great artists, they do remember mothers. That's where you find mothers written about and also portrayed in other ways. And you have to remember that the great artist understands caring and understands the reproduction of the human race, sometimes in ways that other people don't. So she wrote that, and she kept saying, a money wage. Don't give me this business of a coupon and something else. A money wage, money that you put in your hand and that you can spend at your leisure. Okay, there's only one person more that I want to refer to, and that is Johnny Tillman. Now, the most
Hold on.
extraordinary,
You press the button.
the most extraordinary experience that I had, in a way, was I had been on a picket line with some welfare mothers because I saw the picket line and I couldn't refuse a picket line. But I didn't really know a lot about the movement. And then it occurred to me about wages for housework, and we got involved. And then I began to understand that there was a massive movement for money for women in the United States in the middle of the 20th century. And we began to understand how much work had gone into that movement and how important that movement was, and the fact that it was hidden because it was, at least on the surface, black. It was a piece of racism that millions did not know about that movement as wages for housework, which indeed it was. And ultimately, in 1972, very important year to me, Johnny Tillman, who was the head of that movement and really clever, pretty obvious, was invited to write for Ms. Magazine an article about money for women. Will you read that?
Sure. This is what she said. If I were president, I would solve this so-called welfare crisis in a minute and go a long way toward liberating every woman. I just issue a proclamation that women's work is real work. In other words, I'd start paying women a living wage for doing the work we're already doing, child raising and housekeeping.
Isn't that a gem? But look again, read it again. She is inviting women to join that movement. It is an appeal for women of whatever race to join the movement for an income for mothers. A lot has to be said about that, and we have to find a great deal more about it. But we know that that force, that power to get the money and try to keep it, and see that we are not dependent on men. We can have relationships, I hope so, especially if they're sons. But we are not to be dependent on any human being when we work so hard for every human being. And Connie Tillman really began to tell us something about ourselves that we had not found out. And that thing has really had reverberations. There are many things I can say about it, but I don't want to do that today because there are so many brilliant women to say so much, and we want to save all the time for them. Anyway, there was a movement, a massive movement for wages for women in the United States, and we have to look into that more closely and understand more about it. And we want to know about all the schemes and all the problems that women in this country and everywhere, it seems, where there is a financial economy, what women have been plotting, what women have been trying to win, and what women have begun actually to win all over the world. And you'll hear more about that in the days that follow this. Meanwhile, let me just say thank you for listening to me.
That's gone up.
It
went off. If you press the button there.
I didn't do it. I didn't do nothing.
That's it. Just hold it there.
Okay. I'm almost done anyway. I think this is an auspicious occasion, and I look forward to hearing what people will say, and maybe even have a few words to say myself. Thank you very much for listening, and good luck with your important thinking and explanations. Thank you. Wanted to make, and I would be very upset not to have made it. Eleanor Rathbone was for money for every mother. But on the whole, the women who won suffrage and were happy to be more powerful, she said, turned their backs on the women who had helped them to win it, and talked about that they won personal emancipation, but they did not win the emancipation for women generally. I want to say that Emily Kalachi is here, who wrote the book about us. And one of the things that she included was why we said that we will not have women in the Wages for Housework campaign who don't want that money for themselves and therefore for every woman. And that is our policy. We want to change not a particular amount of money. We want to change the world for women, and therefore for everyone. We want everyone to have their own ability to feed themselves.
Yeah.